The protagonist was introduced to be a 17-year-old high schooler named Lee Nori. He was still finding answers about the dreams while other students were enjoying their time in the classroom. Out of nowhere, a sudden sensation was felt by everyone as a purple magic circle appeared underneath them, shocking everyone, and before any of them could comprehend the situation, they lost the record of time. It looked like all of them had been transported to a different location, and while Inori was trying to understand the situation, other classmates were panicking about such a turn of events. None of them were able to find the answer, and out of nowhere, their attention was caught up by a lady flying in the air, calming everyone down, telling them about the location to be a gap of the world. The lady had blonde hair, fair skin, and a lovely aura. She introduced herself to be a goddess, and while the others were still finding answers, she continued to tell them that they were summoned to another world to become heroes in order to defeat the Demon King. Majority of the students were completely blank and confused by those words, and she continued to tell them that the complete souls were going to be transported to one of the empires named Hyjin. Lee realized that all those words were truly something one could expect from a noble and the god. This then concluded that due to some of the constraints, they could only decide on that place with just a little time, and she was going to give them some gifts for visiting it. Her hand reached everyone's heads, and they felt a different kind of sensation at once. When it reached the heads of Inori, she instructed that none of them should use it for any kind of toxicity, and shall use their powers in right regards to lead the people. The next time they opened their eyes, they were in the middle of a king court surrounded by multiple soldiers and could see a girl painting on her breath being happy on success. Others also started praising the lady, believing that that life was going to be good from then on due to the heroes. The king immediately silenced each and every one of them, and he himself stood from the throne to thank them for their arrival. He was introduced to be the emperor of the empire Hyjin, and then, after bowing in front of them with other court members, welcomed everyone to help in defeating the demon king. All those are being treated like nobles, and one of the class representatives came out front to request the majesty to not to go on his knees, and then ask if there is any way by which Day could be sent back to the original world. Saint came up forward and introduced herself as Izia, telling that it is possible, but only after a month when the full moon rises into the sky, marking their day of departure. Further offered even the ones who do not want to fight the demon thing to stay aside, however, for all those were something not could be expected that someone will summon them just for a sightseeing trip. As per Asia, they will return at the same time into their previous world with no time being passed, and still Lee was in wonder about finding the catch those words pertain to. Whispering continued into the hurdle of the students, and the saint inquired by herself about someone's wish. She again requested all of them with her hands joint to save the country and the world. Realizing that it was the time that one of the individuals being self-centered and thinking himself a hero will come up, however, there was no movement from the hurdle of the classmates as all of them were blank. The class representative again came forward to ask for time from those guys as they were not able to make that season right away. Did not react at all as all of them were being handled well, and then later clarified to them that he was going to give them a complete month to make the decision of either returning to the world or to be a hero for the last of them to enjoy the day. Other students were delighted with those words, while Enora decided that the cuisine was much more important than anything else. The complete height of his was filled with different kinds of thoughts of the food that he was going to receive in that world, and out of nowhere another magic circle, yellow in color, appeared underneath him, and he did not even a bit, as his belief was that they were transporting him to the dining area using magic. His thoughts still struck the food he was going to eat, full of spices and flavors. Just then, one of his classmates interrupted his thoughts, calling him loud in quite shock, and then it was revealed that he was the only one standing above the magic circles. While the others were not even in the area of it, it was full of confusion, and before he comprehend the real situation, he was again summoned to the place, which was given the same wife into a white aura, and the goddess again welcomed the souls into the path. She again introduced herself and was quite shocked with the parents once again questioning if he was really the one who just passed the same way. On getting the reconfirmation, she started finding the reason for such an occurrence with her finger on the cheek. Only clear understanding was that his soul was against someone to a different place. However, she had to follow the rule, and so she gave him another gift as he was passing the path again. As soon as the gift was granted, the yellow magic circle appeared once again, and the next moment he was dropped inside a house full of antennae with a thought that the earlier one was purple. However, the current one was yellow in color with a different pattern on it. His thought was interrupted as his current situation was not meant for it. He was confronted with belts, locks, and a mask on his face, and the man, seeing him, was pleased with the successful summoning, looking like a crazy scientist. He was camped by one another individual who was licking his tongue, calling Inori's subject number 12, and both of them were depicting an image of mental patients who turned out to be scientists. He was placed with the magic eye possessed by Lee while he was just finding the real comprehension of the situation, believing that the summoning was really bad for this time. The experiment was going to start right away, and one of the scientists even started packing the right instrument. He was going to use it, and it was not long enough that Inori realized the same thing they have been discussing above. Those guys were going to conduct an experiment on the magic eye, and for that, the old man picked up a knife instrument in front of Inori's eye because he was aware that if a human is summoned from a different world, then they receive a magic eye. Old man then revealed his clothes, showing him different other recruitments, which could be used to kill and perform experiments, and his only job was finding such eyes to really adjust. For the precautionary measures that the doctor took, his hand formed a magic circle, telling that it was done in order to prevent him from going on a rampage or losing control. However, it looks like that Inori was not having any issues in handling such a low-level magic. Old man was shocked as the effect was many, and it was written on his lower face that he was finding the answer to that question, that even that advanced-level hypnosis did not work upon him. Soon his subordinate screamed in shock to tell the doctor that the subject possessed the magic eye in his right side and a truth magic eye in the left one. It was pretty shocking for both of them, and they started celebrating it instantly on finding such a rare specimen, making him the perfect subject. Without wasting any time, both of them picked up their instruments, possibly called weapons, start the experiment right away. While Lee believed that it was really torture in real regards than experiment, Leah was traveling with just the thought of such happening with him. He was deciding to use his right eye to find a way in order to escape from there. However, it looked like that such a thing was not required at all, as soon there appeared a green magic circle, and he was about to be teleported once again. Other two doctors looked really confused about such a thing, while Inori was happy as he was having a smile on her face because it was happening once again. For the third time and visited the same path, this was confusing as it had never happened again, while Lee believed that it was just inevitable as there was no control of him on such a thing. He was searching for an answer for such things, and the goddess was shocked as it was for the first time that the thing was occurring, and then decided to find the answer for the same and to let him know in later times. The top was pretty casual to be done with one of the goddess, and he was again granted within another gift due to the rules, and this time he was summoned to the place of a novel-like girl who was pleased with the arrival of his subject and was accompanied by an elf maid having a smirk on her face. The elf instantly started praising the lady on her magic power, calling it to be something extraordinary while calling our man monster, making him go wild in true regards. That time he was treated like a summoned creature, and in order to wind him under a contract, his blood was about to be attracted with a pin. However, once again he left, both of them turned and confused, and was teleported to the gap of the world, meeting the court once again and irritating her right away. This time he was going to get the answer of such occurrences, and the goddess revealed while being in that every time the target was going to be a strong soul in order to pass through the gap of the world. It was the first requirement. Since the lead possessed one of the rear ones, it was him being the target every time. He was not expecting those, as he was not someone who believed in God at once, but God does clarify that this was not the criteria because it was all the soul, clarifying that it will stop only after his soul was binding to a hero contract. As per the rules, she again gave him another gift as a reward for visiting the gap of the world, and this time he was told by a lady at the Adventure Guild that his skill was stolen, and this was his fourth summoning. He was just a few steps away in making a contract with the soul there and right. Then a black magic circle appeared underneath him, and he was summoned once again. The place was lighting up only at the top and was looking quite haunted. This was the fifth one, and it was a black magic with the black image being completely exhausted. For the gift, he was granted one of that domain, and as soon as the next summoning occurred, he was called to a deserted place filled with black aura being praised by a huge number of demons for the king to be resurrected. It was a good place to become a demon lord because it was written all over his face. However, the sex summoning was even not enough during the seventh one. The goddess clarified that the boy possessed some incredible abilities. Clarify that the last one is going to arrive, and it would be the seventh, giving him a gift for the last time by merging all the others and asking him to check the status as soon as he reaches there. For the last ones, he was again called a hero by the subject who had summoned him. However, the next question was just raised on his identity, as there were three others standing in front of him, including two girls and a boy. The boy was introduced to be a high school student the same age as Inori named Ryudo. One of the girls was Tamaki, who was calling for the other two by their names like they were some friends. Third girl with short hair and brown eyes was Awad. All three of them started the conversation while Inori just sat at the back casually, and their intention was called up by the king sitting on the throne. It gave us confusion because of the things he was only targeting for three, and soon realized that the man was talking about him who was not summoned, but was a freeloader along with the others being called. He just screamed out, finding the answer to the question, grabbing attention of the others instantly. All four of them were standing in front of the king, with Inori being aside from the other three, and the king pointed towards them, telling them that three were the heroes while the fourth one was just an ordinary person caught in the summoning. His confusion was because nothing like this had happened earlier, and soon his voice was taken over by a girl who looked quite excited, telling that she, being the first princess, summoned them. The girl was so full of himself that Lee ended up with his question in mind about the entrance, and the lady continued to introduce them to the kingdom named Rising Sun. The king constituted not only humans, but also demi-humans with demons being the enemies. Those guys were being led by a demon. King's target was the invasion of human territories. It was the Makart Empire, which asked the Human Federation to summon heroes. The lady was just happy because she was holding the royal blood, so summoned them and was going to train them in order to find the demon king forces. Inori was pale to that explanation as he was confused with the quantity over quality factors. All of them were commanded to do their best in order to defeat the demon king, while Inori was just holding his laugh. That time she was calling up for the empire's name. Ryu instantly came forward to find a way in order to reach back to his original world. However, his intentions were turned down effectively by the lady, as there was no one, and those words were shocking for the three high schoolers being friends of each other. The princess was grateful for whatever they had received. However, Inori was confused, if which empire was telling the truth, as one must be the lie from the other, then called for a magical item in order to confirm the blessings they had received. Ryu was the first to come up front for his identification, and it was introduced to be a limit break while Aoi was holding the blessing of barrier magic. The third girl received the magicum affinity while Inori had just detected it in his vault. King gave a fake expression on his blessing being called, and it was enough to let Lee know that it was an odd one out. Soon after that, numerous physical activities were conducted in order to assist their magical and physical abilities. One who was leading with scores in every other criteria was Ryu, while the others were keeping the pace in magic measurement or superhuman results. The only one who was lacking behind and even forming a little magic was Inori, who was sterling with his hands. He was covered in sweat with even a bit of work, and his abilities were far much better in his previous world. The man was so tired that even he was put into the spotlight of utmost shame for having lower abilities than a girl, while the others were standing into the hurdle, keeping him aside. During the night, there was a meeting called up in Ryu to discuss the future, while Inori was just not happy with them possessing huge ones in comparison to his room. One of the girls was just not happy with Lee's presence, as he was not one of the heroes. It was shameful once again, and while Tamaki tried to contact him, he realized that she was the only girl, which shows concern if he was caught up in something. Ryu instantly calmed all of them down to tell them that his ability was important, and while everyone was having a different evaluation, the captain commanded the barrier image to protect the detection holder. Inori was in the middle of finding the cute girl in that serious conversation. He realized that all three of them were good-looking, and it looked like that Inori was a bi. The conversation turned serious, and they started distressing about their intention of staying in the country, and before the correct answers arrived, Inori immediately showed them a book and asked them to not utter a single word. The book was depicting that all of them were being bugged, and that call made everyone go on his guard instantly. His detection skills were really something pretty useful. Actually, his blessing was like the one which throws him into the middle, giving a pretty good view around his surroundings, something useful even beyond the balls. At the right moment, someone was eavesdropping on them from right outside the door, and Inori just made it even more awkward to send her by opening the gate instantly. He tried the same thing multiple times, but there was no outcome arising, so he just wrote onto the paper asking Aoi to cast a soundproof magic barrier. She agreed to the same and then tried her best to cast a green barrier, covering all of them standing in the front with her melons bouncing. It was exhausting, as she was just knew the time period for the same was not going to. Ryu praised her for the task and left her with a blush and smile, and it was a clear picture of being flirting at the time of serious discussion. Only reason why all of them were even dropping upon them was because their power was something which could be useful, as well as a threat to the world. Tamaki did not like that acceptance from the captain and raised voice against it, so clarified that there must be something desperate for them to be called and to read up on the situation. It must be that the nation was facing some financial crisis at the moment. There must be various other reasons, and at the moment when he used his detection still to find the king walking in the corridor, he realized that it was not something an emperor would do, being married by a smaller number of soldiers. Tamaki at first thought about the same thing, but then found that the food was pretty good, and even after being simple was having a lot of spices. Lee in that regard was having a different thought, as he did not like that at all, but to clarify enough, the room in which all of them were kept was really plain and small for a hero. Anyhow, he could not discuss the experience of his own first summoning, as none of them were aware about it. Lee then went on to say that they needed to find a route from the location, and then only they could find a way to return to their world. All the others heard him with total concentration and clarified that since only those three were the only, they were never letting them return back, and it must be that they were hiding two reasons behind their return, as they did not want them to. Ryu then asked them that they could not fight the nation by themselves, having no power to start off at the moment, so they should just work along to read and find the right situation to run off. Tamaki out of nowhere closes the distance between her and Lee, stunning Inori of her true intentions, while she just focused to read on his eye, which was yellow in color, and with that Inori concerns about his odd eye raised, and he covered it with his hand, being embarrassed of a Japanese guy finding it. It was like he was holding some secret which she could not reveal, and the captain supported him along with telling them to leave him alone as it should not be pushed, while Lee supposed that Ryu identified him as a patient having different color due to some birth issues. The night when he went back to his room started questioning the reasons he was possessing those eyes and then remembered about checking his status with it. Out of nowhere, a green screen appeared in front of him, and he was shocked as it came up with a ring, telling him his name and some high members and pets, including magic power, etc., who were still unanswered why his condition during a physical test was so low, even after his stats were that much higher. To get the answer, he decided to move on to the skills, and the first one was Steal, the second being the dark magic. Third one was the detection, which he got onto the seventh summoning and soon realized that the vampire one was granted to him when he was summoned by the noble girl accompanied by an elf. He possessed those teeth which were used in order to suck the blood and move on to the Rhea on the skill. He realized that he had one of the hatred from God, which was preventing him from using his powers under the sun. Even though due to his vampire powers, he was not even liking garlic in the food. The true reason behind his flirting and being untraced by the girls was because he was called up by the nerves carrying blood underneath to the neck. It was embarrassing that he was not able to identify all those things till the moment, and he felt that he was not aware of himself until then. Even on remembering about his past, where from the first to the last summoning, he was given with different kinds of skills every time by the god. That included detection, where he could detect a majority of them inside the range in order to test his second one. He picked up the candle stand from a side, and after removing it, he used his magic in order to forge a weapon out of it between his both hands and sheer concentration. That stand turned out to be quite a sharp knife. About his right eye, it was of a poet, my stick eye specialist for seeing, allowing him to see through everything. Only one, which was the confusion, was about his left name to be the true my stick eye, giving my skill of transferring magic circles inside himself, allowing him to activate within himself at will. He turned back the weapon into its original shape, thinking about learning the magic in the future. While there was still a lot of it, he needed to understand the status board. The most interesting was about his vampire power, which states that if he was sucking more blood, then he would turn the individuals being the target as ghouls. The second reward was that he could turn them there as his servant if he died with his blood. Further, he will also receive the memories of the one. He was sucking blood off, giving him the status of a complete monster. Further, he could even steal their skills with their blood, but the problem was he could only use his full power at night. His skills were making him much more powerful than the others, but the only issue was he needed to understand the world as well as the body. The next day, all the heroes were called along with Inori by one of the commanders of the kingdom, who was going to teach them martial arts, being a lady named Icheta. Inori was still not able to understand why everyone was turning out to be a female into the nation, and then realized that it must be the financial crisis, forcing the nation to adopt them. Icheta then asked that normally they will start with the martial arts, but it was not required in their case since 3 of them already possess a part of magic in themselves. Inori was already willing to get out of that martial art training. To diagnose, we used his skill viewing technique in order to know the stats possessed by the individual. As it was revealed, each one of them had surpassed the human limits. Each then asked everyone to choose whatever they want to after learning the basic martial arts. However, for Inori, things were going to be different as he needed to build up his strength. His training began where he had to do some push-ups and was monitored by the Icheta continuously. His face was completely exhausted with the continuous training, as day was not his piece of the case, and he could not survive sunlight as being a vampire. The training continued till long, however, it was interrupted by the first princess with some other ladies for a talk. Inori was already with that lady. However, he was interested in knowing who the other one was, realizing it must be Princess, as she was accompanied by a maid. The expression given by the lady was very calm, however, sinister, and had a fake smile. Icheta greeted both of them, and the lady revealed that she was there to observe training while the first princess was still full of herself, asking them to be grateful. While Inori was busy in thoughts, the other girl approached him by the second princess. Inori was completely blank as he had not expected a princess to approach him directly. The lady was holding a fake smile on her face. In the afternoon, Inori was taken to the inside where he was accompanied by the second princess, who was going to teach him there. He still was awkward as he was having a separate class while the other 3 were being trained by the first princess in a separate room. The only reason she backed out from training Inori as one of the 3 LG was not the hero, and it was against her status. As the lesson started, the second princess took a stick in her hand, however, was interrupted in the middle by Inori for a question. She again brought back her fake smile on her face and inquired if the second princess was the younger one. She replied with an answer which he had already expected and had denied his claims, blowing all those things over the circumstances. The story behind the same was that the heir to the throne is the first princess, and while Inori tried to understand, he realized that it was really complicated. Through the book, she came to know that there has always been an issue when it comes to royal succession, and he understood through the explanation of the lady during the lessons that the kingdom was saved by defeating the demon king by one of the heroes, and it was founded by a female magician. That lady threw her van and defeated the demon king all by herself, and in other words, the complete founder of the rising sun was named to be a witch. It was the only reason those people had started worshipping which rather than God, and the throne was always passed down to the woman. As for the current king, you were just acting as regent. As said, even a divorce could lead to the transfer of the complete throne authority to her, and it was also through the classes of the second princess learned the basics of magic. Even during all that time, the boy was slacking off in the classes being under watch by the second princess. When the night fell when Inori was in his restroom, he realized that the next day's class was going to be about magic and the practicality would come the day after. The boy had borrowed a magic book from the second princess and he was turning pages of the same, and it was quite awkward to ask for it in front of a lady who kept the fake smile on her face at that time and used to slack in her classes. However, in the contrary, she just acted like a doll, not showing any displeasure. Finally came up with a magic circle and crafted over it an explanation written in the below, and he decided to use his left yellow eye through my stick eye to store the circle within it. He was going to try to activate it at will. Give it a try as told, however, it was not working as the same was not even stored in his eye. When he continued the same task with other magic circles, while turning the pages of the book, he came up with nothing. At the end, he just closed the book as it was a total failure. However, he tried to lift up his morals and set his focus on another eye turned towards the ink and pen. He drew a magic circle on another paper, trying to recall it. The place where he obtained those eyes was the same where the mad doctor was trying to hypnotize him to get his experiment done on both of the eyes of his new subject. That advanced hypnotized magic was stored by Inori in his eye, and for his instant, remembering techniques and photographic memory. He was able to remember and draw the same image right on the paper. It was the same magic circle from the same world as the magical iron. At the moment, he tried to set the focus of his yellow eye onto their sensation, felt by him right away. It was a kind which he had never felt before, and his eyes blew up with some lightning around it, wondering if the boy had succeeded. Immediately rang the bell in order to call someone, and as one of the maids arrived, he asked her for a favor, leaving her completely confused of the true intentions of the boy. Before she could deny or accept that request, he used his my stick eye to cast the magic circle over the lady, and the lady was shocked with that sudden casting. The magic circle was inscribed in the eye of the maid, and she looked pretty being controlled and in a hypnotized position. In order to test his waving his hands around the lady, I did. She showed no sign of self-control, and he then asked her about the color of the undergarment. She was wearing it. It was quite a ridiculous question, yet the maid answered without any hesitation, defining it to be a black, and Inori found that she was telling the truth with the help of her other eye. He finally understood that the magic had really been revealed, and then looking and understanding the circumstances, he wondered if my eye could only store the magic circles from the world where he had obtained it. Inori went into deep thought and realized that in this case, he could only store the hypnosis that fell into his eye. However, the next moment he denied it and tried to draw another circle onto the blank paper. He was able to remember various magic circles, and says he had been summoned multiple times from the green one to the blue and directly as the Demon King. Since each and every one of them he was able to remember it, and tried to store the summoning magic circle into the mystic eye. As soon as he drew and cast the same into his yellow eye, it was activated on the floor. It would be like a real magic circle, and as a summon is completed, he is brought back to a different world using his own magic. And he successfully moved to the forest area near the capital. He was processing some quite good skill in both of his eyes, which will allow him for long-distance vision and the perspective shift of the god's magic eye. Since the boy was already outside and was in a deserted area of the forest, decided to use his other skills if we could utilize the same at night, and then decided to use the black magic in order to lift huge garbage for his telekinesis power, and it turned out to be a successful act as it was done with ease. Actually, a non-living stance can easily be dominated with the power of darkness, and through that the boy could easily move those items and store them into his shadow. It was a tremendous sight to view upon and see those things being controlled by Inori. Their only drawback was he could not influence the non-dominated objects with the dominated ones. However, he could stop the domination and influence them by hurting it. In order to test his net daily, decided to use the black magic shadow movement, and as soon as he marked on his own shadow, he was engulfed by it and was able to travel from the ground and to return back from one of the tree, which was one of the convenient, giving him an extra hand over traveling distance by him on. Space of the shadow was quite spacious too, and he used his domination skill on one of the rocks, thinking about starting to acquire and then cast the weapon creation over the same to forge the complete stone into a huge sword. He then tried to memorize the movements of the Icheta, which was teaching them in the morning through his red eye, and with ease, he was able to imitate the same moves at exact perception. His movements with the sword were to the point and firm, and he was able to continue the practice for long, giving him an advantage to repeat the training as much as he wanted. Out of sudden, his body felt exhausted and he lay down on the floor. Wondering about it, there came up a status window green screen, telling him about the acquisition of the Schwartzman ship for level 1. He was happy with the acquisition even though it took a time, but it was a great skill, and he didn't decide to level it up. Just then something called up for his attention as there was some rustling into the bushes, and he ran off to inquire. He found an organism, not able to identify, and wondered about it being a monster. He then used his skill of identification and came to know that it was Keko, a monster, having a terrible face, red eyes, and tongue be split into two, drooling continuously. The stats possessed by it was something which was not normal, and however, it was one of the specialities of the rising sun, as a complete bed could be made just by feathers. Question was if that country was really interested in such terrible monsters and was thinking of not being the target. He already had some on the list which were weaks and was trolling around the forest, and there were also some others whose stats were far more superior than his current ones, and which was the issue that either they were extremely on a huge level or totally on a weaker side. He went into deep thought of what his next move should be, and if the issue was not in the monsters but himself. Inori soon realized that in a fight, even though he could win, there might be some issues when multiple people come up at him at once. In the end, he decided to just retreat and come back after her preparation. It then turned to the royal castle of the Rising Sun Kingdom, where footsteps would be heard walking inside, and it was stopped by a Cheta who was questioning the second princess. Walking inside the castle at that time without any guards or security, second princess did not show a little fear on her face and kept smiling on not using magic tools during their training. The trainer had proper reasons behind the same, as she believed that all three were under training while being under the strength one, and they could not use such tools before having basic martial arts skills. Second princess was insisting continuously on her to teach them about those tools at once during the beginning in order to give them better. Echeta through her body movement clarified that even though it would be good, however, if one relied on weight from the beginning, then there might be chances that they will turn out weak, and which was why the lady was focusing on building up their body as well as strength along with their mind to prepare them for the battlefield and better cause. Somehow, the second princess did not like the attitude of the Echeta speaking to her in that way. However, she just agreed with it while her fake smile was still on her face, and then apologized for unnecessarily speaking with someone holding the strongest human title. There was an awkward silence around the corridor for a while, and finally Echeta revealed that the girl did not smile as she used to, and it looked like that the arrow hit the target right on the spot, making the second princess to turn around, clarifying her current position of smiling with a fake one. Echeta looked like she was aware from the beginning, and then, without moving the concept to a shift, instantly asked her about her thoughts of the first princess. Second princess still held the calmness and started praising the first one on having talent, reputation, conviction, and ideas, and at the moment, Echeta raised her lantern to ask if she meant whatever the lady was saying. But before she could even continue, the second princess stopped her, telling that even the ball had years and she needed to be cautious. Reminding her of the truth, she clarified that any bad mouthing about the front princess led her to face punishment. Echeta sealed her mouth, and then again there spread an awkward silence around the corridor, while the lady was continuously thinking that the second princess should not worry anyhow, as things were going to be done for better. A few days later, when the heroes were under training, with Inori being sidelined once again, telling that it had already been 2 weeks since they had arrived, the three heroes were training well in the martial arts acquisition. Ryu tested his sportsmanship skills, and he was doing well with his continuous learning. Tamaki was right behind him in learning the staff technique, which will help as a weapon to store her magic. Her strike also on the ground was quite effective and fruitful, and the lady always uses strength against brain, making her a muscular head. Coming to Aoi, she was into archery, making her vulnerable to the skill she was possessing as a barrier. There was no requirement for it. Inori, while looking all three of them, to find that the captain Ryu was good in combat, and right behind was Tamaki, who hold great strength, both in long as well as close combats, and there was also Aoi having her skills into barrier creation, making them one of the perfect team and in great synchronization. As per the case of Inori, his training started just a few days ago, and the focus currently was not on the swordsmanship, but on the dagger throwing techniques, and he was doing well in it. His stealth and trap disarming training was also going underway, and there might be question if those boys were trying to make him some kind of scout, as it would be a great utilization of the detection. When the night fell, he used to cast his summoning magic and visit the forest area through his yellow summoning circle. There he was leveling his own skills through continuous practice, and for that day he was going to use domination scale on this knife to make it move freely inside the forest, marking the targets and then using the release effect on it at the right time for a straight attack. As soon as he released it, the knife directly attacked one of the trees, stabbing it. Diagnose realized that during the day his skills were at their lowest because the sun god's hatred was truly terrible. He continued his training of increasing the level of the skills, moving on to Shadow One. The moment he used his shadow technique, Monster Keko was lurking inside the forest, trying to find food. It was completely unaware that Inori will come at instant pace from his shadow skill to attack it, leaving her just to scream in defense. In order to fight that, he had cast it onto a different skill acquisition through threats, formed by weapon synthesis and strengthened by the power of weakness. He tied up the complete monster using it and called the skill as Black Death Silk. Monster could not do anything and was just screaming out of pain. While Diagnosed was using his Yahello, my stick eye cast the hypnosis skill, making her unable to move on her own accord. The hypnosis spell was cast successfully, and it was visible in the eyes of the monster, and as soon as it was completed, Inori removed his hand from the silk technique, and he was happy that his one of the exercise to capture the Black Death, silk, and hypnosis was completed without any failure. Diagnosed, without giving a second thought, took out his knife and then sliced the truth of the monster, as the living man could not be dominated through the skill. However, once they were out of breath, he could do the same easily. Using his domination skill, he lifted the monster into the air and then stored it inside his shadow space. At that moment, Diagnosed used 3 of the skills and then traveled the shadow area by himself and saw various things lying on the floor, including the monster. There was no one looking at him inside the shadow monsters, and no one could travel the same, so he left the hesitation through his heart and then opened his mouth. He stamped his vampire teeth into the monster's neck to suck blood in order to raise her his own level. There might be an increase in his status too. One of the targets was easily captured, and he then moved onto the other and then used the same skill to find its location. It was going to be a green monster this time, sleeping peacefully at night, not aware of what was going to happen to him next. The monster was not looking tasty, but he was not left with any other choice. He decided to keep on hunting until his level was breached, and so he did. When the dawn came, Inori was completely tired, and when he returned to his room using the teleportation, he just lay on the bed and slept peacefully. May did not leave even a little chance to wake up at the right time, because Inori never used his hypnosis magic on her until or unless he had to do something unconventional. Using his hypnosis skills, on the way he had gathered a lot of information about the rising sun, and it is said that the current princess struggled to have children, and since the country is fundamentally a nation centered around the queen's bloodline, it was said that the princess will give birth to the next birth line. However, strangely, there came the circumstances where the people of the royal family started dying at a younger age, leaving no one to inherit the throne. Left with no choice, the royal line bought a distant duchess as the king's concubine, and she gave birth to one of the girls named Aliyah. It was the same current second princess who was loved by his nation, and through her kind, hard work, and diligence, she had earned the people's support. Everything changed at the moment she turned 7, and there was the birth of another child between the king and the queen, and it was given the name Amanda. Amanda stands for beloved, and the girl was fiery from the beginning, and it was because of her magic and talents she was loved by the queen as well as the king from the start. Aliyah, even though had a lot of knowledge through the books, was not able to possess or inherit those magic powers, and she was stopped receiving education for the session. At the moment when Amanda turns 7, she became the first princess, and Aliyah was left behind while the nation. People also turned their faces against the ones they had praised before taking the sides of Amanda and making her live behind without any support. As Aliyah's name lost its meaning, she turned her back onto those people as well as Amanda, and once she was ignored and abandoned by the king, she decided to live a life having a fake smile on her face continuously, looking at the suffocating castle. Diagnosed was thinking about all those things while he was sitting in the class being taught by Aliyah, and she came up out of nowhere, requesting the boy to wake up as she was trying to teach him something which was important in order to make him grow, for threatening him to not receiving any points for the lessons if he continued sleeping. Inori, without paying me attention, yawned at her once again. Aliyah out of nowhere started raising his concerns over the boy learning concealment and martial art techniques, which was some of the gifted ones into one of the area, and even though he could not use magic in that world and was trembling with his own hands control during the training, he was feeling embarrassed, as even some of the ordinary people could perform those, including the maid who used his magic to clean his dishes as well as clothes. There are very few inside the world who could not use such basic magic, and she then told that if Icheta was taking her time to teach him about some martial techniques, then he should be pleased about it. And the only reason she believed that those guys were doing that is because they were aware of the true value possessed by the boy. Out of nowhere, there was a sudden change into the character of Aliyah, who smashed her hand onto the table to ask the boy to get serious, as I need to put more effort to give an excellent result. Inori did not expect it, and his face turned pale. However, the lady just asked the boy to follow her to a location. Both of them started walking, underground being lit up with candles, and as they were traveling to the basement, they reached to use gate yellow in color, having something beyond their imagination on the other side. Aliyah instantly used her little part of the magic, deciding to use that rather than lessen and try to open the gate. The sheer motivation, she tried to lift his mood while telling that he should be feeling pathetic for being called weak, rather than the hero compared to the others, and Inori was still trying to find the answer with this confused face. What was the sudden change that he had faced? It is truly about the second princess, whose face was telling a different story than her emotions that were hidden into her heart. Perhaps, due to several failures, it might be that she had learned how to hide her emotions and was given the name of Doll. Princess, she was acting on the commands of the first one. However, at the moment when Inori was facing the lady, it looked like she had removed the veil and was showing her true emotions. As both of them entered the huge room, there was a purple magic circle, which was crafted over the head with them being into the middle and Inori behind her following the command as to follow. Elia then told him that the rate at which she was going, there might be chances that he would be kicked out from the current position as in the eyes of the queen. There was no requirement of nurturing an incompetent person who was not going to give something back into the reward. It looked like the face of Elia that whatever she was speaking with utmost faith and was completely true. Inori never believed that something that ridiculous could be a reason because he was possessing the detection blessing, which was useful at the time they were going to battle the Demon King. Elia believed that it truly was the truth, but however, since he was not putting any kind of effort, questions were raised on his inclusion into the team and then inquired why he was not trying a little harder. Elia was throwing those words to the boy as she herself has seen him sleeping and slacking off into the classes, while Inori at a different point of view at the moment when he remembered that he was giving his best in training himself up at night because it was not possible for the same during the day. Ino then continued the act of his attitude, and while telling that he was doing the best, she turned to tell that he just had some basic skills and was not suited for studying by the way. The second princess was teaching him. Elia looked like she was pissed at Daitu with his current reply, and he clarified that the room was completely protected by the barrier, with no one coming or entering without her permission. As Inori tried to open the gate, he had not expected that the lady would raise her cake and would try to attack him from behind, giving him a taste of heal. Inori was pushed to the wall with just that one take in as he turned around. He was completely blank and confused about what just happened. Elia was serious as she did not want the boy to turn into the same situation as she was currently in, as there might be chances that whenever he was going to be thrown out of the castle, he would turn into a monster's hand to be just food, and it would be embarrassing enough. At that moment, the lady was truly not the doll princess, however, a broad and a noble woman who was trying her best to teach the boy what would be the right move at the moment. The motivation from the lady was telling that he needed to change, and as soon as the sentence was completed, Inori started laughing out of nowhere, leaving the girl confused. What was such a kind act when she was her best teacher? Out of nowhere, he praised the lady, giving her a blush on the face. He moved on praising the skills as well as the strength possessed while she was confused. He told that his hunger to survive was far more superior than her to teach him, and those words were not something which Elia had expected from a shit mouth like him. Looking into the boy and giving him a stare look, she finally realized that she had done wrong into interpreting the skills possessed by the boy, as there was a tremendous aura flowing through his body, and the boy was truly aware that he was won the words that he could be kicked out from the castle, and so he was going to find a way. He then went back to his area to remember that he was not to be exiled, as there was much more information to gather upon, and then turned into the training grounds, where it was practicing his knife technique and believed that he needed to show them the true value of his detection blessing in order to secure a place. He was thinking of getting a dungeon, press text to show them what he was really capable of. However, there was not going to be one in the place soon. The training was called off by the lady, and he, being exhausted, wondered if he should approach the Echidna by herself to persuade the king. Without wasting much of the time, he called up for her and had a discussion, then moved to the cabin of Echidna. There the lady called out all of his methods that the boy was thinking to pursue, and then moved all to tell that even though he lacked enthusiasm during normal training, his skills might be useful. The same thing was agreed by the Echidna without any disagreement, and it was quite shocking for the boy, and then the final question came where she wanted him to join as one of the Echidnas. She was aware that his skills were going to be of great use and could lead them to several successes, as his detection skills were more valuable than diamonds and dungeons, and the moment they would fight against the Demon King. The only reason she could not make him any kind of promise was because she was lacking in authority, and then clarified with a screen voice that the only way for him to be prevented by the expansion was to stand on his both feet and act as a normal soldier rather than a hero. As Inori realized that if he joined the soldiers' army, then there might be chances that he will be bounded against the country. He will be standing against other soldiers, which was going to be a bit complicated in order to make his own moves. Then board against the lady to tell that was a tough decision to take right away. However, Echidna thought that the boy will accept it right away, and so she smashed the hands on the table to tell that he could come and find her right away in case he needed some help. As scenes turned to a few days later, it was his lesson classroom where received the news that a note from a neighboring country had arrived into the city, and Elia confirmed that there was a welcome party organized the next day while sitting on the tea. He was just happy that day that he was not going to class for the next day, as she was not going to be available. He was also not invited amongst one of them as he was lacking off in the class continuously, and it was pretty easy to understand that he was being left on purpose but not unintentionally. The next day, the party was conducted, and the hero from the neighboring country was called up with proper ceremony with the nation. People standing on each of the sides throwing flowers. There were also soldiers who were raising the flags high of the rising sun kingdom, and Inori was looking at all the events through the window, wondering if they truly had to face a financial crisis or not. And that was the only one left behind without any call to attend the party, and in case if he attended the same, he was aware that he needed to explain his position to the foreign dignity as someone who was caught into the hero summoning as an abnormal existence. Inori was not ready to face any kind of investigation from the old man and the secretary, which was going to be a hassle, and so he just lay down on the bed. Even though he was not interested in attending the event physically, he didn't decide to use his powers to view what's really going on. Immediately using mystic eyes of poetry and then using his long-distance sight, he found that both the princess were standing in the middle pretty well dressed up. Once again, Alia's face looked like a smiling doll and their place was completely decorated with luxurious items and food, and Inori was just lurking over it in the mind with no access to stories. Inori then went on to remember what the meat told her when he casted the hypnosis Gil as the party was conducted as a major factor for the economic crisis. An intruder was the queen who was trying to show her economy wealth to the foreign candidates, and in this place, she was not even listening to the advice of the king anymore and was just standing behind acting as a support. Through the eyesight, his attention turned to the three individuals who were standing against the current hero of the nation, and there might be those who were also three, and the third one with his ears, and the eyes were looking pretty gloomy. The last one was one of the individuals who was looking like a blonde guy having a look of Japanese, so he decided to assess, and the name came out to be old-fashioned and could be the one whose title was fitting for a hero. The boy was shouting at Ryu, and as Inori used his lips-reading technique, he heard that the man was calling to bring Inori right in front of him as he wanted to challenge the boy for a duel. As asked, Inori was called with the invitation by the lady, Alia, and everyone's attention was instantly shifted to Set. As soon as Inori arrived, he was invited for a duel by the blonde hair guy, and there spread an awkward silence between both of them, with Lady Alia being in between, having no suggestion. It was not against her, but everyone standing aside, including the heroes, were not able to understand the current situation. On asking for the reason behind the same, the man screamed out to tell that he wanted to prove his own worth to the goddess that he is not worthy, and he started to think that he was not aware of anything about it. Hero then turned to tell him that he might have also visited the white space where he met with the daughter, and he was stunned at the moment when he saw her, and she was quite tremendous and beautiful. Inori, hostile, confused in what there was relation between him, called off for a duel and that event, and at that moment the boy modified that he had proposed to the goddess, and the only invitation the boy got that he need to defeat Inori in order to consider his proposal, and at the moment when he said those words, he caught Inori by his collar and asked him for a duel once again. In short, he realized that it was the goddess' way of mocking the boy, and she had done all those things to make him trouble. He was just pissed with that attitude from the girl, and everyone was confused with the white space and got this matter as no one was able to understand it. Inori understood that all of them were called up by a different way of working, and he was not going to explain them as it would be a pain, so he just decided to play dumb and then accepted the duel, shocking the hero from another nation completely. He was ready to start the battle instantly, however. Inori called up to form some rules before the same. We clarified that his skill and blessing was not suitable for a one-on-one fight, and it would be unfair if they go by the traditional way, and it was paid in agreement by all the three members of the Heroes of Rising Kingdom. He tried to mark the guy and say that if you want to enjoy and take unfavorable advantage, then it would be a different story, and the boy was even more pissed as he was ready to accept any kind of contest for the same. Everyone realized that the boy was truly simple-minded, as it was not expected from one of them from a different nation, and then taking on Inori clarified that the one who was going to defeat the boss of the dungeon near the capital will be the one victorious. He from another nation agreed to the condition, and instantly Ryu interrupted to tell the boy that his abilities are for scouting and deviating. A dungeon boss will be an issue for sure. Inori was pretty sure about the plan, and with that, the guest left the place, realizing that the door was going to start by the next day. As the duel completed, he was instantly called up by the queen, who inquired why he showed such a disgraceful display of tactics. The dungeon, and even after choosing the venue, was the one who was defeated. As per the information, it was pretty clear that the boy who was standing in front of him was truly a very strong person, as he was able to slice down monsters with his swordsmanship. The moment he faces the one I created, who was the boss of the dungeon, it was not an issue for him, and he was able to live, deliver the final blow, and slice down to get it on the floor and be defeated easily. That hero was standing up front with a win, having a smile on his face, while Inori was continuously using his detection to avoid any kind of monster as well as the final boss. His skill was allowing him to find the traps as well as the enemy's location, giving him an advantage to not even come closer to it. Queen was looking furious when she was bailing that his laziness and attitude was not longer going to be tolerated, and it was told that the only reason he was given the shelter under the roof of the royal palace was because of the Icheta. However, she believes that through his actions, the boy had brought disgrace to the country, and she was not going to allow something like that any longer. Elia was also beside when the conversation was going on, however, was not able to speak anything, and out of anger, the queen finally delivered her declaration that the boy was going to be exiled from the kingdom from then on. Inori was not looking even a bit surprised with that declaration. No one was able to stand to the declaration and could raise a voice against it, and when he was asked about having any kind of objections on the same, replied positively to it, and it was not expected by the queen that a merboy was going to raise questions to her decisions. Instantly, he questioned what kind of harm the queen was particularly talking about, and she believed that it was the moment when he lost the duel against the hero from another nation. Inori agreed to remembering how that blonde hair guy was having the specific skill to slice down the boss in one go, however, clarifying that the one thing that was on the stake during the duel was qualification. It was just for the base who was going to be suitable for a certain woman, which was the good days, and it was a duel to prove that. One of the conditions for the battle was no information was going to be shared to the outsiders. After that, there was a sudden change in the attitude of Inori, and he screamed out to tell that his location as well as identity was not known to the other outsiders, and he was not a hero. There was no case that he was going to tarnish the reputation of the nation or the queen. He believed that in simpler words, the completion was a farce. Queen had no answer against that, and he continued to tell that he had really done something inside the dungeon, and then called up for some of the soldiers who bought a sack of something, and he gracefully presented all of it to the queen as gift. Queen had not expected that there would be turns of jewels coming out from that particular bag, which were looking quite simple, and as soon as it was presented, the queen as well as the princess was shocked to get a sight of it. He clarified that it was a dungeon treasure which he found inside it, and he was not dying on defeating the heroes, and the beginning as a target was the same to revive the economy. Queen had a smile on the face at the moment she raised the coins in her hand, and he clarified that using the scale of detection, he had achieved all of it, and his plans from the beginning was the same, that using the duel, he was going to prove his worth, and it was the only goal. Alia had never expected such a graceful display of cunningness from the boy, and she was completely silent as he had thrown 2 arrows in one strike, where he had saved his own position as well as had not tarnished the reputation of the hero, which would raise concerns over the nation. When the night turned, Inori again went back for his training, and his hands were filled with blood at the moment. He was licking it like a vampire. And since he was not going to be banished from the nation anymore, he had more time for training. However, he was just getting tired and eating the same monster continuously for a number of times. He was in search of something else, and once again, he had a kind of sensation which he was having since the last few days, as it was something different and strange. They were originally trays, but he still of detection was telling him about something different, and without wasting a second, he then used his right red eye for the evil eye of perception, and then found out what was the real cause behind his cause of unease. As soon as Inori used the scale, there was created a barrier in front of him with red in color, and he surpassed his hand in order to find a monster, which was far more superior than the one he was taking down earlier with a skill to teleport back in case it turned out to be more dangerous. There was truly a monster which looked like it had a blue aura around itself, and it looked like Inori was going to face it next. Inori passed on through the barrier, and then he felt a different sensation once again, as there was some wrestling around the bushes. The moment he turned behind, he saw some white wolves approaching him with an intent to kill. Since it was his first time facing some magical beast, he used his threat technique once again on the death web to control those wolves at once. It was looking furious when he casted various threats with his fingers, and soon he was able to win the battle with his sheer techniques. He was hurt a little during the battle as they were attacking groups. However, in the end, all of them were caught and strangled into those webs. Having no lives in themselves, all of them were killed, and so he pushed them into his shadow area to have something new in the blood test. After his hunger was finally completed, he once again came out of his shadow area, and there was some great wrestling around the forest, giving indication that there was going to appear the final boss once again. Without wasting a second, he decided to retreat, as it was not going to be a great move to face it at the moment, as he was already tired. However, nature had something else planned, and as soon as he turned behind, his hand was caught up by a wolf, which was trying to attack him into a mythical character. Before he could realize what had happened, he had lost one of his arms, and it was truly not the end, as he was not even ready with his next move, and the mythical monster attacked him once again through a cake, making him strangle on the floor through a long distance. After a while, when he came back to his senses, he started to wonder what had happened, and there was standing a mythical wolf in front of him, huge in size, having an intense blue aura, an aura to kill, and take revenge for whatever he had done to his comrades. That was not an ordinary monster, but a phantom beast. At the moment, Inori had also lost one of his arms. It was a mid-level boss, and Inori wondered if his next move could be either to escape from the shadows. Once again, his planning looked like that was going to be nullified, as before he could make the phantom try to attack him once again at an instant speed, and soon he could see the teeth and the huge mouth where he was going to be engulfed by the monster. As soon as I tried to and somehow attacked, he was seen into the air, having his bat wings coming out from both of his sides. At that moment, he remembered about the lady with so many. He got that vampire skill. It gave him an advantage to fly into the air, and was a great help. The phantom beast was capable to talk to him, and he inquired if what was the reason for him coming behind, and the only answer he received in against the question was that Inori was lost into the way and traveled to the location. The phantom was quite surprised with such an answer, as it was not something which could be expected from the one who had taken down numerous of his comrades, and there was already an illusion cast which was separating them from the normal human beings. Inori then questioned his tactics, where he had set up the illusion quite familiar and could be easily breed one, and there came a declaration from the phantom beast that he was recognizing the man as one of the intruder and the one who had killed his comrade, so he should pay for the cost by his own life. It was not long when Inori realized that those words clarified that the place was really something important for them, so there must be something hidden inside it too. As to answer the curiosity the phantom beast gave him as a gift because he believed that Inori was going to travel to the afterlife, he clarified that the place was something which they had made a pact with the witch, and according to it, the witch had given them the duty to protect that land, and which is why they were working with their best in order to eliminate the tough monsters. In the eyes of the phantom beast, even Inori was considered to be an intruder and shall be eliminated once, and he then ordered him to stay still to receive a peaceful death in case if he moved then, it would be a miserable death. The phantom beast stopped in between as he was confused by the regeneration abilities of the boy, which had already grown his completely torn arm into a full one. The phantom was realizing that the boy was not an ordinary person. Tried to attack him once again, as he believed that there was no reason left to make him live furthermore, and as he tried to attack, Inori looked like he was of God. Once again, Inori somehow managed to dodge the attack using his abilities to read his further movements, but it was surely going to be hard to escape. Immediately ran off into the air. Furthermore, since she was not having the ability to fly higher, you decided to get an escape through the forest under the roots. It looks like that the phantom beast was already prepared with it, and as soon as Inori tried to do the same, he attacked him with sharp arrows from his tail, and it worked pretty well as that arrows were enough to break trees in one attack. The phantom beast was looking quite furious in his current self as his eyes were glowing with an intent to kill, and Inori was the one who was lying on the floor being defeated and hurt with the attack. It looked like it was going to be the final blow where the product was not going to be able to move any further, and the attack landed with pinpoint precision. Once again, he do the attack at the last moment, wondering about the way to find an escape. His continuous run was about to end as he could see the waterfall, which was end of the forest, but it looked like that the phantom beast had something else planned in his way, and it attacked him once again from the above, using his skills of tail, which were pinpointing and were enough to even strangle the wings of Inori. The regenerative abilities for the same word, reducing time by time, and the phantom beast was having the last love which screamed to let the boy die and try to attack him once again. On the other hand, Inori mug out of nowhere and then launched an attack from his shadow ability in form of wood arrows, something large enough to even make the phantom beast retreat. He had not expected such a great attack from a human like him, which had used his weapon, casting abilities to form those sharp arrows under the shadow through the woods. It crumbled in the beginning. However, it was not like that the protagonist was completely out of danger with the help of those arrows, but the battle was going to continue. The phantom beast had an angry look on his face, and as that beast was trying to approach him, Inori realized that even though he could use his teleportation magic to escape, he was willing to use his hypnosis effect before it, and sure need to store a different magic circle into his eye to act into that manner of teleportation, and which is why he decided to buy some time. Without wasting any further seconds, he crafted some of the magic skills and then used his domination onto it, shocking the phantom once again. In order to find an opening, he released all those knife attacks at once, and all of them were targeted to the body of the phantom, who was wondering if what was that attack this time. Still, that beast was approaching him continuously without having any impact on the body, giving an intuition that he was really strong at the fast speed. The phantom again attacked him. However, Inori used his domination to create a shield and attack on the parts of the phantom. All those attacks were turning out to be useless as it was sloppy and was not working on him. The phantom beast then again cast some of the needles from his tail, and Inori tried to defend against it, using the knife he was holding in his hand. It was pretty visible that he was on the back foot at this time, and soon Inori realized through one of the step by the arrow that he just needed to protect his legs and heart to escape, and he could take all other attacks right on his body, which will be instantly cured due to his regenerative abilities. The phantom beast was having a toil on his nerves as he had never expected that there would be a human which would exist along with him who could face him this long. He was calling the guy a persistent one while Inori used his dark web skill to restrict the movements of that phantom beast inside his own area. Those webs were strangled around the tree's forest, and as soon as the beast tried to attack him, he was caught up into the trap and was not able to move any further or to catch up to Inori. In anger, he just growled and Inori laughed. However, that laugh was not meant to be as soon. Those webs strangling were removed as using his sheer strength, the wolf had broken all the trees and relieved himself from that web. The mythical beast was truly something which could not be taken as a normal monster, and it was also quite unexpected for Inori that the beast was able to escape through those dark silk webs. In the end, he decided to use his term card. However, it looked like that he was not having enough time as the phantom beast again tried to attack him using his arrows from the tail. Inori decided to run away, and he was being followed up by the phantom continuously, and during all that time he was planning on something, wishing that it would work. Out of nowhere, Inori decided to climb on the tree at intense speed, and then after reaching to the air, it gave a signal to the phantom that it was a foolish move as he was never ever going to escape through it. In the midair, he would like to be an easy target, and the phantom tried to attack him once again. Using the sharp arrow blades from his style, Inori was not left with any other move. Inori, on the other hand, used his left yellow eye to cast a magic circle, which was pointed to the dark web. He had been created once again as a trap. Now the mythical beast was standing in between the magic circle, and as soon as Inori realized that it was going to be his move, he was happy that the Mystic Eye Rest storage was completed. He instantly activated that magic circle of teleportation, and the circle was reflected towards the back of him at the mid, and the phantom beast was completely astonished with his disappearance, and was confused if the boy had really disappeared. It was his plan from the beginning. However, Inori just appeared behind him out of nowhere with 2 knives into his hand, wishing him a goodbye, and since the phantom beast was not aware about his appearance behind the bank, he let his guard down and was stabbed with both the knives into his eyes, making him completely blind. That was an extraordinary move by ordinary man, and with that there was extreme bleeding from the eyes of the phantom beast, and he could just scream in pain and could do nothing. It looks like Inori was going to have the last laugh. However, he might have not considered the power held by the mythical beast, which just broke the complete forest with a single scream of anger. Even though he tried to attack Inori using the tail, he again used his teleportation to change his location. And at that moment, the mythical beast was truly not able to identify the location of Inori. He realized that the only thing that the beast was using to pinpoint his location was scent, and it was truly visible through his complete body. The killing intent that was held by the beast was completely overwhelming, and he tried to attack him once again into the mid-air, but Inori decided to back off. He used his teleportation still once again to disappear from the location, while the mythical beast was just left with a wooden branch into his face with no Inori having it. He soon realized that the boy had escaped from the mid-air from his land after hurting him and not being the prey. Teleportation magic worked well and was teleported to his home completely tired of the battle and hurt with the continuous strikes. This side he had planned for. Even though he was just injured, his plan was to defeat that beast at last in the next battle. From that day onwards inside the royal palace, Inori had now started working on his equipment, and he even used his shadow skills to infiltrate the 5th Army to obtain some medals. He got his hand on some of the finance sources and the material that could be used for the emergencies. From the emergency at the moment when he was going to fight the phantom beast, somehow he was also able to grab on some of the tail hairs of that beast, which had several strengths including crystallization, hardening, and others. In short, Inori, using his red eye, came to know that the fur could change its characteristics when it was exposed to magic, and that attack was not going to work when he was going to be covered in some kind of stuff. Immediately change his characteristics and then use the yellow domination on those for willing to make a weapon out of wet, and as soon as he used his weapon creation, he casted the silk web technique to perform that form into one of his weapons. The new web that he has formed was something which should not be torn at any amount of force because of crystallization technique, and this substance that had obtained at the moment was something which even the phantom base will not be able to come out of. Use physics used those threads in order to forge a club using his weapon creation technique, having several properties into self-hardened crystallization and others. That love has even other characteristics, including making a certain part with magic circles. At the right moment, he came up with a different idea, and in the next thing, he was seen wearing a complete dress into a suit up to standards, because the man was going to be ready for revenge, his eyes filled with the overwhelming intent to kill, and he called that time. Perfect time for revenge. Battle once again started in the forest as Inori used teleportation magic to lay directly to the area of the phantom beast. The phantom beast instantly felt the scent, and their Inori was all suited up for the battle against him with his new code. The phantom beast had already lost his side and was only relying on this end, and he was furious that the boy again visited his land, showing a complete sense of shamelessness. Tried to mark him on the eyes. However, the phantom beast was in no mood for a joke, and he instantly launched his attack. The accuracy without seeing was completely unbelievable in this time, the phantom beast, and decided to take on the life of the human being, who tried to trespass his territory twice, even after the warning. Inori felt that his intent to kill was far beyond his pain of the eye loss, and so he also went for the better with an intent and determination to kill that guy. This time for sure. The phantom beast tried to attack him once again, while he used his shadow casting technique to call for some of the dark wolves, with red auras surrounding them and red eyes to attack. Those creatures instantly attacked on the phantom beast, and he was pretty confused about what just happened. Those dark wolves were grabbing on some of the parts of the phantom beast combined, and the man clarified that through the same, he could easily identify that those beasts were none other than his own comrades were trying to attack him. The phantom beast's anger raised to one another level to see that the boy was using his comrades as the toy to attack him right away, and clarified by himself with a smile on his face that he made them his servant in order to use them. Phantom was again increased with those words, and he took down his comrades with just one loud scream, and then attacked on Inori with the help of the fur pinpointing towards his body in order to slice him into 2 hours. On the contrary, that attack did not work well at all on Inori, as his complete body was covered with the suit made by the threats of the phantom beast, strong enough not to be sliced or damaged. Phantom continued its continuous strike on his body with some strong attacks, while Inori used the comrades of black wolves to attack and harm the concentration of the phantom beast. Then when Inori was lying on the floor, having no intent to attack, even more the phantom beast, identifying the position, decided to deliver the final blow. I have a little line that it was pretty much very early for it, as Inori used his teleportation magic once again to deviate from the location, leaving the phantom beast with just wood on in his mouth. He once again escaped, and it was pretty ridiculous as he was doing the same again and again. Inori was then seen into the sky, covered up by the teleportation magic above his head, and as soon as the fan realized the same, he tried to jump in order to catch him into mid-air, leaving him no chance to escape. Diagnosis did not dodge this attack, and he stayed at his position to tell that he might have judged it wrong. As for the moment, there were the web strings which were protecting him, and so when the venom beast tried to attack him, he was turned down by those strings onto the floor, leaving Inori above in the sky. Phantom realizes that it must be his own commates who are being controlled by Inori, who cast those strings around the area because he was never able to identify the sense of his own comrades as enemies. Inori was still hanging in the sky, being guarded by those strings, and the phantom beast was much more interested in doing what the man had really done. Without wasting much more time, revealed with glitter in his eyes that those strings were made by his own, for he would never be able to escape it. A Diagonal was looking furious in his current self, and he immediately used his next attack and shrank those threats while pointing it towards the phantom beast. The phantom beast was still confused, and before he could realize the next move, his complete body was covered with dead strings in order to restrict his movement, and he lay down on the floor due to pain. All he could do was growl in anger and pain, and without drawing any more attention, Inori reached down to the ground to tell him that he might not have realized the scent of his own form, which was taken as an advantage to cover his complete body and restrict his movement. He clarified that all the moves he had played until then were in order to decrease the beast's concentration from the battle and increase his anger to distract him from the threat. At the moment when he used his teleportation, the beast was not left with another move, and in the end, the beast was lying on the floor, having no right to move, while Inori was standing in front as a master. It was time to bid farewell to the phantom beast, and Inori immediately stretched upon those strings using his domination skills, and that complete scene was being witnessed by the comrades of the phantom beast, who were not able to do anything. It was the moment when the phantom's life was to end, and he had accepted his fate that his time was about to end. Inori curved upon the blood of that monster using his vampire skills, and his level had increased 5 times and also acquired some skills through the battle. One of those was the unique skill of Bass of the King, and with that he was able to hear the words of his servant shadows who were trying to talk. Inori realized that all those happenings were because he had obtained the vessel of the king, and as he questioned the subordinates, they revealed the reason to make him a call. They requested him to make his master a subordinate of them. He was concerned about the phantom beast lying on the ground, having no breath at the moment, and also he was the one who had fought for the land throughout his life and protected everyone. This request was something which should be granted, looking at the condition they were going through, and so Inori agreed to the same. It was not any kind of downfall for him at the moment. However, he was still very much tired with all the hustling he had done in order to win the fight. The scene changed once again, and as it turned to the dining table, the heroes were discussing how the first and the second princess were not getting along, and it was agreed by the others also, where one of the girls believed that the second princess was just too reserved. Oe had a different perspective regarding the same. She was also aware that they both didn't like each other. During all that conversation, the only man who was silent and confused with the food in front of him was Inori, who was terrified with the garlic lying on the plate of steak. All three of them turned towards Inori for his reply. However, he was still stuck on the food and was confused why he was being dragged into the conversation. He just wanted the girls to be much more aware about it, other than him, while Ryu believed that the only person who was too close to the second princess was him, as he was taking private lessons from her, and so he must be much more aware than him. And it could be helpful if he could help in mending both of their relationships. Inori did not like such a talk, as he was aware that the first princess was someone who would not even love to talk to him because of his current status. However, Ryu was ready to help him in that case, as he was aware that the first princess was already into him, finding a love for life. In order to reconfirm the same, Inori turned towards the girl and found one of them dazed, another totally confused. However, with the looks of both of them, it was pretty sure that he was that kind of guy from the start. As soon as Ryu offered a deal, Inori agreed to help and instantly approved the deal with a sparkle in his eyes. As per the talks, and with the thought of what would be the correct move, Inori just knocked on the door of the first princess, who was ready to meet him on the command of the hero. However, she was still calling him a commoner. Inori did not like the attitude of the girl, which was over the top, and still she continued to show her attitude, asking him to be grateful to be able to talk to the first princess. As Inori looked around, he found that the room was completely luxurious, filled with different kinds of artifacts, but still was lacking consistency. The princess realized that the boy was lurking around and called out that it was nothing in her case and he should be fascinated by those things. Mocking her even more, Inori pointed to one of the artifacts, which was in the shape of an owl. However, a lady called off his talks, telling him that all those were gifts he had received from other countries or from his mother. Inori realized that there was no outcome coming out of such talks from the girl, so he managed the conversation and switched it to the discussion about the second princess and her relationship with the same, but the lady just turned down, saying that there was no concern in her heart regarding that girl, and it was a confirmation that the conversation was going to get nowhere. Amanda was not even worried about Alia in the first place, and when Inori showed his concern about making both of them meet in a single place, the girl immediately denied it, as her true intentions were not clear while playing with her hair and blushing. Inori had a different face when he heard those words, and he wanted to reconfirm. However, the lady just turned her back on him, telling him that it was not for his concerns in the first place, and he should not interrupt the internal matters of the family. In the end, when the conversation was not going anywhere, Inori decided to use his trump card, and that was the request of the hero who had asked him to come and start a conversation between both of them. He then told her that if there was not going to be something like it, then the person was surely going to be angry about setting up this opportunity. Those words acted like a trigger for the lady, and with both cheeks blushing hard, she requested him to stop and offered to tell him the complete story while he was being impatient. As the conversation moved ahead, both of them sat at a place to discuss the things, and she, while climbing her hair, declared that things were pretty much better from the beginning when they were younger, and in that time, it was not her hands, but the hands of all which were used to calm the fits of the little girl. She believed that she was the only person who used to play with her and act like an elder sister, and she always followed her wherever she went like a shadow. However, things changed after some time when Amanda started to notice that Alia was creating a distance while she was covered in the huddle and she was standing alone, and at the moment when she turned 7, she was announced as the first princess with the right to inherit the throne, and it was the point where the wall was created between both of them. It was then revealed that Alia was not the real daughter of the mother at that point. She felt that she was all away from her sister, and things were going to be much worse from then on. It was the point when the relationship turned into a disgrace against Inori, who listened carefully. She continued that her training from then on was much stricter in order to attain the throne, and it was then when she realized through her that the only and most kind person inside the whole family was her sister alone, who helped her at the time of need. During those times, she had thoughts where she requested the lady to be with her at the time, however, she was not. Her request had always been turned down by the adults whenever she wanted to grow their relationship any further because they were already aware of the truth, and it was all while she was telling this story that her hand was already down from her hair and she had turned around her face. Inori instantly understood that all that attitude and other behavior was just because the lady was influenced by others, and even the current decoration of the complete room was telling the same story where her true self was hidden somewhere and something else was depicted upon her. Everything, along with the furniture, was provided in order to cast and brainwash the little girl, and the only way for her to stand in the middle along with others was to act like an adult, and with having this haughty attitude. The lady, as soon as she completed her story, was waiting for him to offer some words, as she was wishing to hear some advice. However, Inori was still under the thought that her pride was just a part of her nature, but not the true self of her real identity. He, out of nowhere, declared the lady to be the sister, and it was confusing for her, as she had not expected something like that. She was concerned about what that act would yield and what others would start thinking if something like that happened. However, Inori remarked that there might not be a country where maids were holding higher status than a princess, as a princess shall decide how she should act, not others influencing her. Those words hit the target for the girl, and she then started concerning herself about her elder sister, who would be under threat if something went on like this. Inori confirmed the same, that there was truly a wrong understanding in the head of the first princess regarding her, and with those words, she just got silent. Pouting on the face of Inori, she agreed to take that thing into consideration and then thanked him for the first time in a long while. Inori left the room and then called the maid, who was looking upon him, giving her some instructions to follow. The maid was not making a good face as she was not ready. However, she was forced to deliver the message, and looking at her face, Inori realized that it was expected as she was the maid of the second princess. As the scene turned to the next day, just in the morning, the maid of the second princess arrived to tell Inori that there was a message from the second princess, who was asking him to come for the lesson, which was going to be far more different than what he had done till date. Inori already had a bad feeling about what was going to happen with him next. As soon as he got ready, he was called up to travel around the city, and the only person lagging behind the two girls was Inori. Elia was calling her to hurry up while he was just confused about what he was doing in the streets of the city, following those two girls. The class was surely not going to be in that place. However, Elia told him that all those things were part of her social studies where he needed to be sure about the surroundings, and today they were going to take him to a shop as a noble. On questioning where they were going and what they were going to shop for that day, she just did not answer and then asked him to follow. All of them entered a jewelry shop where various artifacts were lying, all made up with expensive crystals. The second princess was attracted to all those artifacts, and she was pretty much concerned about what she was going to select. She even asked him to choose one from the two, and he just casually answered to choose anyone which suited her best. It was then when she revealed that what she was purchasing was not for herself, and from that, Inori was confused about her message. The maid then came by herself to tell Inori that what she was choosing was because she wanted to give a good gift to the first princess after the message was delivered to her. As soon as she heard those messages, she decided to buy something for the younger sister. On understanding the complete scenario, he was even told that the only reason she was asking him was because he met her and might be aware of what suited her best or what kind of thing she loved. Inori himself was confused about what he had seen and what kind of artifacts he had witnessed in the room of the first princess, and he was ready to give anything as she was going to like it all. There he revealed that his concern was that it was not what she was going to give, as in his eyes, everything she would select would be the perfect one for the younger sister. Those words were kind, however, he was just having a thought to get back for a good sleep. The most moved person with that conversation was the second princess, and then she selected the gift she wanted to get for the younger sister by herself. The maid was also aware that it was all because of that the lady was being much concerned about giving the gift to her younger sister in the first place, and after she witnessed the smile on the face of the lady, she was moved that it was not the fake or the doll-type smile this time. Inori witnessed the same. However, when the lady asked by herself what they were discussing, it moved away from the topic and were offered lunch as a treat. The scene moved to 5 days later where there was a big party organized, and Inori was one of the individuals who were invited to join the birthday party in the first place. The meals were pretty expensive and there were only high-status individuals. Inori was reviewing whatever movements the other individuals were making, and he found that the Prime Minister was more concerned about security. His eyes immediately turned to find out the position of the second princess, and it was quite unexpected that she was hiding behind a pillar as she was looking pretty nervous, just to talk to her younger sister. Amanda was in conversation with the current hero, while Inori was thinking of a step to get his holiday back. Out of nervousness, Elia even confirmed with Inori what she should do, and he reminded her how old she was when she kicked him onto the back without any second thought of what the consequences could be. She was still in the middle of the thought of how she should act next while Inori just pushed her towards the first princess, and the distance between both of them reduced with every passing second. Everyone present there was totally stunned with such a move, as it looked like none of them wanted such things to happen. Inori was the only one who was silent and acted like nothing was done from his end, and there was an awkward moment between both the sisters while the elder one was hiding the present behind her. Whispers started to grow among the crowd while Inori was not liking it, as it was just a normal meeting between two sisters standing against each other. He was also not liking the elder sister hiding the present behind her, as he was asking her to give it to her, and somehow the message reached the heart of the lady. She presented it with both hands in front, wishing Amanda a happy birthday and showing her gift towards her. Amanda was moved by such a move from the girl, and her cheeks were completely red at the moment as she had never expected it. Gently, she took the present from the hands of her elder sister, and at the moment she opened it, she was moved and presented a request to use it at the right moment. Ilya agreed with that requirement, and before she could realize, Amanda presented the request once again. Listening to the command, the elder lady gently put it over the head of the younger girl, and it was looking fabulous. Once again, the older sister was taking care of the hair of the younger one, giving her the jewel which she purchased for her. And with that, the lady was moved, getting into a good conversation with the older sister who was praising her looks and whatever she was wearing that day. Both of them were having some good time amongst a lot of people, and only 3 or 4 people were praising such a move, including the heroes, while the others were not very happy with that bond reaching a high level. However, before anyone could utter a single word, Amanda presented a request to have one more gift, and while blushing and keeping her eyes a little down, she requested to call her older sister. Elia was done with that request, and as she did not utter a single word, Amanda requested a reconfirmation while the blush continued. At that moment, Elia was getting flashbacks of how she used to take care of the younger sister. All those flashbacks were enough for the lady to get tears rolling through her eyes, and she allowed it with the greatest happiness present, and without tears, the youngest sister was not able to stop herself. Without paying any attention to others, she just rushed away, and both the sisters, with tears in their eyes, hugged each other. That was a delightful moment for everyone and one of the most precious in the entire story. Now the problem was really solved after seeing such a delightful moment. Even the queen and the king were having tears rolling through their eyes. Even the hero was happy with the work of Inori, as he did really well, while he was more concerned about his reward in return for whatever hard work he had done until that moment. Just the thought of the talk, giving a reassurance for doing the same, made him happy that both the princesses met up, as things were going to get much smoother from there on. Inori realized that the character the hero was holding was much more superior than a real one, and without paying much attention, he just moved away, excusing himself to get a little more fresh air. Heading outside while he was standing on the balcony, the second princess approached him from behind and then gently thanked him for the supervision he had provided during the time, and there she was willing to get the discussion going on, which was allowed by Inori, without any concern. There was a connection, there was some exchange of emotions between both of the individuals, and it was more like the couple's sight while the girl was on the back foot after blushing at the flaunting words of the boy. Something mysterious was going on inside the party hall, as there was some bloodshed from which even the guests were confused, and it was not long before the screams reached the ears of the two who were standing outside. Without slacking any further, they both decided to go inside. Elia was pretty familiar with the scream, however, and Ori came in front to stop her from moving any further. The next view was not expected by everyone as they rolled ahead of the queen on the floor with screams around the party area, a man standing between the throne and the queen and the king without any mercy. Everyone was praying and willing to hear the words, and just then a scream erupted, asking everyone to go silent, while all of them were addressed as corrupt fools who were spending the finances of the nation without a second thought, just to show off in front of others. Still, the blood was on the side of the individual, and it was dropping, and on the side we could see that both the heads of the king and the queen had been sliced from the throne, and they had been beheaded for not interrupting the decisions of the queen. There the man with an angry look on his face and having blue eyes declared himself as the king named Videre, and then declared the Icheta to be the queen. None of them expected that the girl would come in front to act as a rebellion, and on the other hand, the current princess had already reached the beheaded head of her mother, who was just happy with that meetup of her 2 daughters. She, being in absolute anger, was emitting a tremendous purple aura from her body and was surely not happy with whatever happened. The anger reached its peak and she started to cast a magic ball into her hand in order to defeat both of the rebels in one go. However, the lady was surely not ready to fight one of the strongest women in the entire nation, and she came up front and sliced the hand of that girl using one sword strike, leaving her completely stunned and rolling one of her hands into the air. Left with nothing, the girl fell on the ground, and so did the art granted by her sister. 3 of the heroes tried to interrupt in between and help the girl from the misery. However, it was immediately stopped by the Icheta, who ordered all of them to just stay behind or lose their lives. The sword of the girl was still on the neck of the princess in the fire of the conversation between both of them. The newly declared queen screamed out to introduce themselves as the children of a witch and was not happy at all with the ones who had betrayed her will and summoned the heroes from the foolish world. Both the sisters were not able to do anything, and there were only tears, nothing in particular, as soon as the task was declared a grave sin. The only punishment equivalent to fulfilling such a sin was declared to be death. Following the orders, the current queen sliced the head of the princess in one strike without any mercy, asking her to return to the witch's side, and at that time there was only bloodshed with the head of the younger lady falling on the ground. The older sister, Elia, was not able to understand what just happened, and she was about to scream when Inori interrupted in between, asking her to just not utter a single word. He immediately identified both of them as rebels, which was unexpected as even the soldiers were on the side of the lady. The newly declared king immediately ordered the citizens to give those guests who had arrived at high status their part of sufferings and punish them with whatever means they wanted to. None of them was able to make a move in that short time, and soon each and every one of them was sent to the witch's side with their heads sliced off. The men were the ones receiving a part of punishment they were not expecting, while the current king was just enjoying the sight, as it was just the fruit he was delivering for whatever sins those individuals had performed in the form of wastage and discrimination. Inori was still holding onto the words of the elder sister, who had just seen her complete family being wiped off for spending a few gold coins without any permission. He further informed her that in case even a single word was uttered, then it would surely be her death at that very moment. He presented her with two choices, either to die worthlessly at the moment or to survive and escape from the location. Ailey was still in thought about what choice she should make while, on the other hand, numerous guests were receiving the sufferings for their sins while being sliced off with metal swords. Hero Ryu was lying near the body of the first princess Amanda, and it looked like he was not liking whatever was happening at the moment. Out of anger, he just screamed out onto the declaration for someone to deserve to die and calm him down at the moment. Vittori informed the young hero that whatever he had seen was just something which was taken out from their lives, and he was truly not aware of the current situation. Ryu had no change of heart, and he still believed that there was no requirement to make such a kind of move. To make him understand even further, he told him that if he saw what the real condition of the nation was, where the poor were still suffering for a bite of bread, he would understand what was going on while the nobles were having their feasts with gold coins whenever they wanted. On the command, the current queen erupted her blue aura to deliver the request against the hero, asking him to just calm down or lose his life. It looked like Ryu was in full mood to resist, and he, without giving a second thought, used his blessing of limit break and called up a sword from mid-air, attacking it directly onto the body of the Echetta. It was a furious attack at once, which was expected to work. However, on the contrary, the lady just defended against it, using a shield out of nowhere, and praised the impact delivered. However, it looked like the complete impact was nullified. Ryu tried his best to launch the attack in order to harm the barrier. However, it was pretty clear with the experience and the skills that the Aikido is on a completely higher level, and she, even while dodging the attack, delivered some of the lashes noticed by the hero. Interruption was required from the barrier holder, and so Elway interrupted in between the battle and created a barrier to defend against those attacks with whatever power she was holding at the moment. Tamako was also among those who were battling to save the hero from those attacks, wishing that they should be holding some weapons at the moment. The Ashida realized that the other two heroes were also working there to win the battle while Ryu was already exhausted and was somehow holding on to his breath. The Ashida was aware that it was going to be a long battle from whatever it looked like while she was engaging herself in battling Ryu. It was pretty clear that she was on top of the battle right now, and she even informed the hero that anyhow he had to lose, so he should just give up. Her intention was to capture Alia after capturing all of them, while Alia was shedding tears outside the balcony, thinking of what her next move should be. Inori again interrupted to tell her the current situation of whatever things were going on and informed her that if she stayed there, then she would surely die, so she should choose the different option and escape from there. It looked like the girl was already on the verge of decline. Inori, left with no option, reminded her that she should not give up once again, and there came up the flashback of her little sister walking beside her while holding hands with each other. As soon as those flashbacks turned on, she immediately decided not to give up and was going to survive for the sake of Amanda, being absolutely sure of what her next move was going to be, and she was not going to die worthlessly. Inori was happy with the declaration, and he decided to help her in the escape and then refused to call her by the second princess. He decided to call her by the name of Alia. While the battle was still going on inside, Ryu was on the back foot, and soon his sword was also defeated with a strike by the Echetta. He was left with no other option, and before he could comprehend the next move, a powerful kick was delivered to the gut of Hero in a vertical position, and it looked like it was his defeat when the others screamed out his name while the one turning out victorious was the Echetta standing tall. Tamako decided to find a move in order to protect Ryu first. However, something unexpected happened, as before she could find a way for her task, the Echetta rushed forward to deliver one of the slices towards both of them, turning down the barrier as well as the attack from the other girl and stunning both of them on the move. She immediately commanded the soldiers to grab onto both of them, and the soldiers followed the command and instantly put them into a hold, not allowing them to make a move at the moment. All three of the heroes were on the floor with the soldiers being in command, and then she commanded them to take all of them to the prison. The Ishida, after reading the situation, realized that there might be a chance that the second princess had escaped, but it did not matter because it was not possible by herself. On the other hand, the second princess was already running along with Inori through the corridor. However, it was no good, so they decided to take the next left. She followed as commanded, and the soldiers were already on the way to identify their location. However, it looked like there might be a chance the Echetta was planning all this since the beginning. While she was in thought, Inori pulled her from behind, asking her if she could use magic, and if she could, then she should use it at the right moment when three soldiers appeared from the corner. Ailey was stunned and requested to change direction. However, it was not an option as the soldiers were already standing around the corridor waiting for them. Left with no choice, she decided to go on with the plan and then use her magic to form a magic wall inside her hand, compressing it with the magic and as the countdown of seconds turned to the final point, she released her attack in the form of a whirlwind where 3 of the magic balls were delivered at once. As soon as soldiers showed their presence, their complete faces were covered in that magic ball. Out of suffocation, all 3 of them fell on the ground, reaching their death, and they easily waited until they just passed away. He was just happy that an ally was by his side as she could take on 3 individuals at once, while Ilya was happy that her magic worked at the right time, and she was pretty much concerned with the boy being too exhausted at the moment. He did not answer the question at the moment, and then, just after grabbing her hand, asked her to move forward as there was much more security waiting for them in the front. Inside the servant quarters, those 2 were already under discussion in order to find a way to escape. Ilya pointed to a location where there might be the perfect way to escape, as it contained a hidden door that would lead to the underground waterways. She believed that if they went from there, they would easily be able to hide through the castle, as it was connected in a way that would lead them to it. Inori decided to give it a try, and since it was only known to the royals, which was an emergency-created route, the question stood if it was really in usable condition or not. They were not holding many more options at the moment, so they decided to use it right away. Before leaving, Ilya once again apologized to the maid for not being helpful at the moment, and she was just thankful for her for whatever she had done until then in whatever ways. On the other side, soldiers were already on the move to find the location of both of them, while Inori was just clear in his mind that he should give the pathway a try, which was only known to the nobles. He was just rushing towards the mark with the best he could do. Even if the place was not usable, they were not left with other options. However, after reaching a point, he immediately stopped the girl from moving any further and told her that they were already being pursued by a lot of individuals not capable of running out. Soldiers were already closing in on them, and their retreat was going to be difficult, and soon they were also able to hear the footsteps of those soldiers walking towards them in huge numbers. In the eyes of Inori, he believed that those guys were already aware of the way and also that the place was completely locked down. Since the lady was not left with an answer, he just reconfirmed if those guys used to torture for information or just sliced off the head to give them an easy death, as escaping was surely not going to be an easy task. He knew that he could escape right away if he was alone. However, for those 2, it was a pretty tedious task, and while he was still in the middle of the thought, the lady just screamed out to not give up and that they shall find a way to escape, as she was going to fight till the end. Inori was done with the declaration, as he had not expected such determination from a lady who used to give up from the beginning, and being happy from it, he realized that she was a girl on whom he could rely. He informed her that in true regards, an army from the neighboring nation was already approaching them, and he was pretty sure that it was not either for the sake of the heroes or others, but surely there were amongst them who could help in finding a way out from the location. Ilya was eager to know the time they would arrive, and it was going to be around sunset, or in short, in around 15 minutes. For the time being, they had to find a way to survive by avoiding combat. Relying on the current situation, it was just a 50-50 chance that they were going to survive until that time, and so they decided to move on to the area where there were fewer soldiers to increase their chances of survival. Their running was noticed by some of them, and they decided to follow her and attack her, with magic arrows at once to secure her location. However, as soon as the arrows were delivered, the lady used her magic power in order to block all of them, as she was determined to ensure her survival for the next 15 minutes in any condition. It looked like the magic barrier was not sufficient to stop those arrows from the soldiers, and they did attack the body of the girl while delivering some slashes. Following the command, she turned right in order to avoid those arrows, while the soldiers decided to give their best to surround them and not let them escape. It was even tough for Inori to protect the move, as they were moving much faster than he had imagined, and they were also arriving from the left passage, so he needed to find a way to block them. Ilya, upon hearing those words, immediately cast a barrier into the left pathway to stop those soldiers, and they were confused about the magical barrier appearing out of nowhere, which they could not break. However, one of them was much stronger and managed to get past that way, and even though those guys had somehow managed to avoid getting pincered, they were on the verge of defeat. The sun was setting as expected, and there were just a few seconds left while both of them had reached a dead end. Ilya was not able to understand what move they were going to make, as they didn't have a way out, and Inori informed her that they were not going to be able to, as they were already surrounded and ambushed, and they needed to hold their breath for the next 3 minutes. Even 3 minutes was a tedious task, as the soldiers had already arrived, and they had armed them with fire arrows. As soon as the fire arrows were delivered, Ilya decided to give her best once again and cast a magic barrier to stop those, and she was successful at once. One of the commanders from the soldiers asked them to charge once again, and they decided to keep attacking them with the arrows and bows, as they were aware that the barrier was not going to last long, since both of them were already exhausted. The bows were loaded again, while Ilya believed that her magic was not sufficient to stop one more barrage, and was aware that in case she failed to avoid any of the arrows, then there might be some fatal damage that could be delivered. As expected, when the arrows were delivered, they were pinpointed to her location. Her magic was not sufficient to stop them, and it ended up in a blast. The soldiers were getting ready for the next attack, and by that time her magic was already exhausted and she was not able to cast even a little barrier. When the next barrage was launched, she felt completely helpless and was losing her strength. She confirmed if the help was going to arrive anyhow. The soldiers were happy that no counter was being effective, and to their expectations, the second princess also fell on the ground being helpless. Inori had already disappeared from the location while the second princess decided to search for him as she had not expected a betrayal like this. She started screaming to find out the location of the boy and wondered if she was once again used as bait in order to escape, and her doubts were increasing by every passing second, where she was raising concerns if all those things were in order to create a time where she could be used to create a pathway. It looked like she was again losing complete confidence in herself as she wondered if that was a lie, while the soldiers again commanded for the next barrage in order to finish off the things at once. The lady just accepted her fate as it was not going to be any good, while as soon as the sunset was finished, a dark aura was emitted and there arrived Inori in his current self, wearing the complete set of his clothes, telling her that it was not his time to win that battle. Inori was waiting for the sunset from the beginning, and the soldier was confused of how that darkness spread out all of a sudden. None of them was able to see anything, but before they could go for the turn-on of lights, a dragon-like shadow appeared above them and commanded the phantom beast to take care of all of them at once. As commanded, the beast tried to attack them from above while they were confused, and before they could comprehend the real situation, their heads were sliced off without any mercy. Some of the soldiers still tried to show their resolve in order to face. However, it was of no advantage as they were also down and were finding their way to report the situation. Elia was also crawling in order to find what really was happening. However, the protagonist did not answer and then went on for the last slice where the soldier was calling for someone as backup. As soon as the soldier turned back, he turned to see that Inori was present there, having the tremendous aura around himself, questioning the phantom beast if the order was fulfilled. Phantom Beast completed his master orders on command, calling them some of the weak humans, and as the soldier was the only one remaining, he tried to run away from him, begging for mercy for his life. Inori reminded him how he had not shown any mercy on any of them. The moment he was killing people inside like vegetables, and due to this, even the protagonist was holding an enormous amount of anger within himself through which even the soldier was not ready to believe that the boy was really the one he knew by the name of Inori. It was sure that the man was going to reach his death, and the same happened when his head was sliced by the phantom beast. The only one remaining inside the corridor against the dead end was Alia, covered in bloodshed, still trying to figure out what really happened. Inori noticed that the girl was trying to stop the bleeding, but it was already late enough that it could not be turned back. Alia again tried to get the answer of his powers. However, he calmed her down, telling that it could only be used after sunset, and it was not his real intention that he was hiding it. He further went on to tell that if it was for his own survival, there was not an issue from the beginning. Still, Alia was holding a kind of courage into her eyes, willing to fight for her true self. The protagonist noticed he remembered that those were similar to the moment. She showed absolute resolve and had not given up till yet. He was ready to give her offer, and then after confirming that she was the earlier told that if she wanted to survive, then the only way was to be his servant and work under him. Options were either she could die as human or could survive in another identity, and the choice was all hers.